next, we have two Thai composers who explore various aspects of gaming, either in the thinking behind the work or the interfaces they use. The next presenter, the first of those two presenters, is Poumpak Charuprakorn, who's right now, I believe, in Cardiff, in Wales. Hello, good morning. Are you in Wales right now?
No, I'm actually in Bangkok right
now.
I just got back a few days ago.
Okay, great. Well, then, good afternoon. Good afternoon. And so Poumpak is a composer and a tuba player, studied composition at Chulalongkorn University, and is currently pursuing a doctoral degree in Wales. Am I right? Is this correct?
Yeah, I just finished actually.
Oh, you just finished. Oh, congratulations! You need to update your biography. Then he is still active as a performer and currently performs with the Hoot and Cow Collective, which explores the boundaries between performer and composer, and plays contemporary classical music. And today you will be talking about your use of the Gametrak controller, which is an early 2000 console platform, and how you employ this in collaboration with the Swansea Laptop Orchestra to manipulate electroacoustic music gestures. So good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, should I just share my screen or something? Or
you can share whatever you want, including your screen.
Okay, thank you. So, okay. So, may I begin?
you may. There is my cue.
So, thank you. It's a bit different from an actual conference or presentation. So,
the world has changed. Yes.
Yeah, but thank you so much for having me today. My name is Poumpak, and I just finished my PhD from Cardiff Uni, and I just got back to Thailand a couple of days ago. So I'm in state quarantine at the moment, and my study was funded by the Office of Higher Education Commission of Thailand. So I'm really grateful for their support. And today I'm gonna talk about Gametrak controller. I think a lot of people know about it or have seen it before, or some people might have not. But so I'm gonna talk about the aspect of Gametrak controller being a virtual musical instrument and how I use it to realize a piece, my composition, like a short composition called Sound Capsule. So everything started a couple of years ago when I had a collaboration with Swansea Laptop Orchestra in Wales. And since then, I started exploring the use of Gametrak controller more in my other compositions. And because of the lockdown, I had time to kind of like look into how it works, really looked into how it is applied in my compositions. So basically, Gametrak is an alternative gestural controller. So gestural controller in music has been studied for so many years, you know, from the 80s or even earlier by a guy called like Axel Mulder. I think he's one of the scholar in controllers, and he called this kind of interface a virtual musical instrument. Or other scholars like Miranda or Wanderley, who call these devices digital musical instruments. So basically, we are looking at an instrument that uses computer-generated sounds, which receives data from, let's say, input device. Okay, and the thing I would like to cover at the end is about the realization of Sound Capsule and how I find the use of Gametrak different from like the sense of normal instrument. Like for me, it became a tool. It became a part of the patch and the composition itself. It's not an instrument that just performs a piece, but it's part of it. So okay, today presentation, I'll cover a little bit about the Gametrak controller first and how it works and the general understanding of how data are being mapped in other compositions, including my composition and my friend's composition. And the second part will be about Sound Capsule itself, about the concept behind the piece and the different data mapping procedures and some examples from the piece and how I kind of like apply the gestural device in the composition. So I would like to cover a bit about Gametrak controller. In the next slide, I will show you photos of how it looks like for anyone who hasn't known it before. But Gametrak controller is a game controller basically for a golf game on PlayStation 2. And I mean, I have seen two companies that made Gametrak, so Into Games, Gametrak, and Mad Cats. And the one I'm using is Mad Cats. There are some differences that, like Into Games one will not work on computers for some reason. So that's why I use the Mad Cats one. And so basically Gametrak it wasn't very successful when it was released, because like at the time it was a bit crazy to buy like a specific device just for that game. So it wasn't very successful. But like from the 2000s, like a lot of laptop orchestra used Gametrak controllers in their orchestras. For example, Princeton, Stanford, Dublin, and Swansea. And basically Gametrak has two joysticks, which I'm gonna call tethers. And these two joysticks have two set of have like potentiometers, so like some kind of devices that would track the position of the player's hands by measuring X, Y, and Z axes. So and then the device sends this information to the computer or PlayStation originally. So these are the photos of Gametrak controller. I just took the photos a couple of hours ago. So you see that there are two controllers, left and right, and one foot switch. And if you look at the bottom right photo, you see that so you can pull the two tethers out from the device. So you can actually stand above the device and move around it. And then for the golf game, you just mimic the golf stroke or something. And then the instrument will send, the device will send some set of data to the game. I could not really find the evidence of why those laptop orchestras decided to use Gametrak controller, but I've got some guesses. Like basically Gametrak controller is an input device that is sending analog data that can be mapped by algorithms or max patches in so many ways. For example, just sending straight positions of X, Y, and Z axes to the computer, and you kind of like mapped it directly to pitch or dynamic or playback speed or something. Another thing that you can do by using conditional logics on a computer, like on Max or PD, is that you can use the speed from one point to another, and then you can do stuff with it. You know, like the speed from point A to point B, and then that speed can be the speed of like a rotating sound through speakers around the audience, this kind of thing. And another thing that I think is really nice and is really good for a live performance is that Gametrak controller is a gestural device. So you need really clear gestures when you perform it. So that creates the relationship between sonic presence and the performative attention, which is really good for a live performance. So basically, if you perform some gestures, the audience will be able to hear similar sounds. And that is basically what we see in live, like instrumental or acoustic instrument performance anyway. Like when you see a percussionist hit something, you expect to hear some, like the particular sound right away. So some other advantages of Gametrak controller is its tactility. It's really tactile, and it's really tangible. It's not like using webcams or using Xbox Kinect that you have to rely on camera and it might go wrong. And I've seen performances of my friend that Xbox Kinect like went wrong so many times. So like the physicality of it is really easy to handle, and it's really cheap as well. You can get it on eBay or Amazon for like 10, 15 or 20 pounds. And it's easy to hack. You just have to open it and then solder something, and then it will be compatible with computers. And that promotes the DIY approach to composing and performing. Basically, you can do it at home. You can hack the device at home. You can order it online, hack it at home, and then try writing different patches and explore it by yourself. And you can actually perform a complete piece by yourself. It doesn't have to be an orchestra like Princeton laptop orchestra or anything. You can do it by yourself. It's also easy to program as well because it only sends data in numbers like 0 to 4095. So you can scale these numbers into different things. You can create conditions. So it's quite easy to work on Macs or PD. So this is a chart that I wrote quickly of the performable area of one tether. So let's say one side of the game track. So one side of the game track can move around 80 degrees around the center area. So it can go 40 degrees to the left and to the right, or to the front and to the back of the main, like imaginary 0 axis, let's say. And it's also like, it's quite long, like the SAT length is really long. So it can go up to 4.7 meters. So the performable area above the game track is really big. And also in some performances, they turn game track upside down and put it on the ceiling. So you can actually move freely on the floor, and the two tethers will track your positions. So the foot switch will send 0 and 1, so just digital number data, and then two tethers will send numbers on X and Y axes, and the length of the cable would send the SAT data. Again, it's between 0 and 4095, and so you can map that, or you can scale that in your patch. So the example of like direct mapping I have mentioned earlier, it can be found in my friend's composition, Richard McReynolds. He divided the circle performable area around the game track. I'm going to show you the circle and the graph later on. And then each segment of the circle will trigger different recordings. So once, let's say your left hand is in segment 1, the patch will play recording 1, and the length of the tethers on left and right hand will control the volume and the playback speed. And with 2 hands, you can create a composition, and you can combine like different sounds with the playback speeds and different volumes together. So this is the like a top view above the game track. So if you scale it from 0 to 4, like from 0 to 4095 into X, like minus X number and positive X number. So you can kind of create this kind of graph that will give you coordinates, like X, Y, Z coordinates, for example. So in one of my composition series stretches, I kind of like designed the patch that the X number, so like from left to right, will control the range of white noise from low to high, low to on the left and high on the right. And the movement between Y axis will trigger the noise in that range. For example, if you move towards yourself and hit the central line, like Y equals 0, it will trigger that area of white noise in the X area that you are triggering. And the speed of this gesture will determine the dynamic of the sound as well. And with both hands, you can kind of like layer several bands of white noise on top of each other. And in all the sections, so I divided the circle above the game track into segments, and the speed from one point, let's say bottom left section, to the opposite side of the circle will determine the speed of the rotating spatial sounds that will move around the audience, like I just mentioned earlier. I would like to stress the importance of like action and sound symbiosis here, because like basically game track sends data to your computer, and you use your computer program to map the data. And then another thing that we have to keep in mind is the movement, like what movement we are performing and what sounds we are producing, that have to be like they have to correspond in some ways. So I would like to talk about Sound Capsule now, which is a short composition. I explore a bit, like a few things in this one. So it's a short composition for a live performance with game track, and I performed it by myself. And I try to use the actual space more, you know, like the space around the game track, the space on the stage. So I want to move around game track, not just standing above it and perform. So I want to explore the actual space around it. And it means that I'm going to need a different algorithm and another way to map the data that is being sent to the computer. And so the concept of this piece is that I was trying to create an imaginary soundscape that consists of sounds that do not belong together, which is realized in a live performance. So basically, the left and right are the hands above the tether, and so the sound samples are placed in different positions, which use Cartesian coordinates, so X, Y, Z position in the virtual space inside the computer. And the patch will kind of like calculate the distances between my right hand, left hand, and these objects to determine which one is the loudest. So it means that if I place sounds around me and I move around, I turn around, the audience will hear that I'm moving, like the sound will be moving around the audience as well. So I'm exploring the virtual space with sounds in it, but the audience can see me moving in the actual performance as well. So basically the distance controls the amplitude. So the amplitude. So if I'm closer to this one, it means that this sound will be louder than the other one. And with that, we can create like a stereo soundscape of the sound objects I place in the virtual space. And this is kind of like the events. So to be able to perform the entire piece by myself, I need to program the patch to play different sounds at different positions, basically. So these are kind of like, this is the chart of events in this composition. So at 1 minute, if you look at event 2, at 1 minute, it will start playing the bagpipe at coordinate -6, 10, and 6. And it will move from that to -6, 30, and 6. So that basically tells you what is happening in the entire piece. And this is the map, if I can call it a map, of the first event in this composition. So there are 4 sounds surrounding me. I will be standing in the middle, and I have 1 minute to explore. If you see, event 1 is 0.0 minute and 1 second. So I have around 1 minute to explore this. So I can move around freely. I can walk around to explore the sound freely. So the audience would experience these sounds differently every time I perform as well. So basically it works like a VR goggle without the visual. And the device I'm using is a lot simpler than that. It's just a game controller with my left and right hand, basically. And the next one is the second event in the piece. So after 1 minute, the patch will play a recording of bagpipes band or something, which is moving away from me. So it will become like softer and softer by the end. And so like the chart I showed earlier is kind of like the score or the map of the composition. So I have to keep moving around the sound, exploring the sound, and also giving the audience the different soundscapes that they could experience. I would like to show you the table again. And so if you look at events 8 to 15, you're going to see that everything is being repeated. So at these sections, the sounds are being played around me. I will be standing in the middle now. The sounds are being played around me. And then when we get to event 12, the sound will start rotating. So this is the chart of 8 to 11, let's say. When it gets to event 12, these sounds would just move around me. And that also, the muting gesture will be triggered as well. So if I move my hands towards my ears, the filters would be applied for the entire sound. So it's like I'm covering my ears. So what you can only hear is just muffled sounds from these samples, basically. No, I'm not sure how much time I've got, but I think I've come to the end of this. So the question and the problem that I've had after I I try to look back into this composition and the technology again, is that I'm not sure if Gametrak in this composition is actually an instrument, because a gesture does not represent a sound. It's not like you're playing a drum. If you do this gesture, if you perform this gesture, it will play a sound with this characteristic or something. But it's just a tool. It's like I'm using a mouse or a keyboard to realize a piece, basically a tape piece. Yeah, so I feel that this is part of the composition. This is part of the algorithm. So the line between instrument and algorithm is really thin here, and which is the nature of virtuality today. With the technology that is rapidly advancing, we can't really tell what is what. We can't really understand, but we can just always look back and understand what we have done in the past. Yeah, I think that's everything. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Poumpak. That was really interesting, and you managed to summarize everything in only 20 minutes, which is not an easy task. I'm sure you have many more things to share. I love to hear some of the sounds you've been making, or some of the gestures you've been composing with this. If you have links for us that you could share in the chat, or
yeah, sure, I can get it from from SoundCloud, and I can post it. But if anyone has any question, please feel free to drop the questions here. I'm happy to answer and discuss if you want.
You can either type your question in the chat or raise your hand, and we can bring you into the conversation. Any questions out there? I think we have a question from the virtual space here appearing.
Hello, can you
Hello.
hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my question would be, because I've done something similar for my previous recital project, I want to know that for you personally, working with such an interdisciplinary project like this, is it an advantage or a disadvantage in terms of creativity, musicality? Because you have to like partition your brain to partly to be thinking about the algorithmic, like the algorithms, the software, the instructions that you have to have the computer do, and the other part we have to think creatively as a musician, like how can you make a sound interesting? For you, is that an impediment, or is that actually in a way helpful and opens up a new door to new creativity?
Yeah, I get it. I think it's not. I don't think it took my brain away from the creative work that I have to do, because I think I started as a composer, not an electronic engineer or something. So I always started with sounds, the sounds that I wanted to have, and then I would find a way to make it happen. So I mean, I think the creative part has always been there. I just have to find the technologies that can achieve that. And I think it gives you, like when you write for instrument, you're gonna have to think about how they perform it anyway. Like how they're gonna perform it, what is the actual sound that you want them to play, or what is the technique, where do you have to bow, or how do they have to play the instrument? So we have to think of like these technical stuff anyway. So I think it's a thing that we have to keep in mind when we are working with technologies, or even like real human,
And another question would be, when you work with technology, there is this technological bottleneck that sometimes can happen especially when you're working with older hardware. So I want to know, for you, if you want to do something and for some reason you cannot do it with that particular technology, what would be your workaround? How would you work around that problem?
I would just stick with what I have. It's easier to just kind of like adapt your plan to what you have. And I mean, like when you work on a project, it depends on your funding as well. There will be devices that would help you to achieve that. But then if you don't have the funding, if you don't have the access, so you're gonna have to forget about it and then just move on with the project. I think that's the only thing I can.
So do you always have like a plan B? Like if that's not possible, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah. More than just 2 plans, like 1,000 plans.
Thousands of plans.
Yeah. I think we've got a question from Jerry, which is my friend from Cardiff. So I can see that your composition needs surround sound. So how would you have designed? So this one is designed for just 2 speakers in front of the audience, but the perfect setup for this would be earphones. So everyone wearing earphones, but I don't know how to do that yet. So.
Do we have any more questions?
If you want to discuss anything, just drop me an email or message or something. I'm very happy. I have 2 weeks for myself in this state quarantine, so I can just talk to you about anything.
Wow. So you've only just arrived?
Yeah, just like on Monday. So my quarantine started yesterday, so I have 2 more weeks to go.
Okay, well, it looks like quite a nice space. At least you have a beautiful light.
Good food.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope we'll meet in a physical space at some point soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Please stay with us
Yeah, sure.
for the next guest, and we can all ask each other more questions later on. I hope our attendees will wake up. And we are a little bit early, but absolute time is probably irrelevant in virtuality. So I'll introduce our next guest, who's right now in Korea, so 3 hours ahead. I know, how many hours? Hello, Ice, are you here?
Hello.
What?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Nice background. What time is it for you right now?
Almost 6, around 5:30. Yeah, so
Oh.
we are 2 hours ahead. I'm in Bangkok.
Okay. Well, let me introduce you quickly. Kittiphan Janbuala is a Thai composer who's also a teacher at Kittiphan University. Currently conducting further studies at Seoul University, and he is an interdisciplinary artist who specializes in sound and visual manipulation in the context of live performance. His working strategies are usually based on the synthesis of textures and visual concrete effects through sonification procedures. He is a very accomplished programmer. I've had the chance to collaborate with Ice several times, and he has a really unique aesthetic in his own creative work, manipulating digital media. And today he's going to talk about, give us insight into his artistic process and motivations behind a solo performance entitled Free Road, which he describes as a game where performers interact with the musical element by controlling a car and avoiding colliding obstacles on a screen. So Ice, thank you for joining us. I pass the microphone to you now.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to give some talk. Did you hear my voice? Firstly, I would like to share my skin. What the talk about today? Actually, this is my. I'm talking about my creativity process. About my. Let's say that I'm preparing for my dissertation about sonification thing, and this work is one of the development that I'm still develop the aesthetic and the method for my own composition. Yeah, the name the talk is about the audiovisual project, because this work is laid on audiovisual project, which title Free Road. I have a reason why I call it free in parenthesis road. Yeah, they have some hidden meaning. So the content of today consists of 5 categories. I will just briefly summarize what is happened to this creative process. I'm not going to talk in depth in the the score process or synthesis process, but what is important on this research is about the aesthetic, how I employ the sonification method to generate the artwork. So first, I want to talk about the first section. Actually, this on my paper that I'm submitted to the conference, divide at 5 categories. The first, I want to mention about the background of noise in the composition. Yeah, as we know, Luigi Russolo, that he stated on his statement, the art of noises. I believe that many composers and many, modern contemporary artists, we really develop, our thinking, on the basic of his philosophy, because we feel that the sound, the acoustic sound, let's say, from the instrument acoustic sound, that not enough for us to, to fulfill, to generate the sound that we want, right? The reason is, if we are ordinary, let's say ordinary or conventional composer, we always compose and we always reference to the piano, right? We know that piano is very, to me, it's very narrow. For in the register, and it's too clean when we employ. When we use the piano to doing some music composition, piano is so beautiful sound, to clean sound. But for the modern artist, modern composer, we feel that this timbre of the piano is not enough for us to generate the modern art. That's why we extend the length, or we try to develop the sound for our composition. So I have to mention 2 persons. On the left is Richard Wagner, and many believe that because of him, he doesn't give the room for the other composer to develop much work, because he's very good in music modulation. His music very great in tonality, and that's why many composers they have to find their own way to develop. Like, for example, like Schoenberg, for example, he invented 12 tone, or whoever, like at the example like Helmut Lackermann, right? After he went to study with Pierre Schaeffer, he's learning about music concrete, and he employed to his own aesthetic, become like instrument music concrete, right? Use the real instrument but extend the potential to create the sound. Yes. And we can see that noise is very important to our modern generation, or to the modern artist. But I didn't mean every composer, every artist needs to employ the noise to their works. So the second aesthetic that I will talk, that include in this work, is about glitch. Glitch, as we know, is the aesthetic of failure or the error. The meaning, as I added show on the presentation, glitch means suddenly or usually temporary malfunction or fault of equipment. This definition from the Oxford Dictionary. And another one is technically glitch. Artists exploit a technique error to disfigure source, such as information or images, to create new meaning outcome. It's very interesting, the word that create new meaning. We have some, the basic material, basic source, how we interpret that, how we develop it into the new meaning, or maybe sound like a variation, or develop the material. So as we see the painter, we know that who is the painter on the left and on the right. Since the world invent the camera, no one really interested in maybe reality anymore. The artists, they need to find a new way to express their artwork, right? Like the expressionist, or cubist cubism of the Picasso. So back to the music. What is it? Is it used? I mean, by many, let's say, modern, I mean, pop band or pop band, rock band. They employed the Greek aesthetic to develop their sound. Right? As we might know, like the effect of the guitar, for example, is distort or change the shape of the aspect of the sound, become the new thing, and many techniques that invented on this aesthetic what applies to modern music. On the left, I forget to mention is the work of Nam Jun Baek. He like the let's say like the first, I mean the person who really, I mean, employed the aesthetic of Euler to his audio visual work. Yeah. On the right is Epic to Win. This is the song that we can find on the YouTube as well. Like if we have time to listen, we will see that okay, how they employ the aesthetic of Euler on the sound, and he generate or create the music. So the third part is maybe quite the most important part of my focus. It's about the sound generated through sonification. So what is sonification? Actually, let's see the definition first. Sonification is the transformation of any data relation into perceived relation in an acoustic signal for the purpose of facilitating communication or interpretation. Actually, we are a composer. Before we compose, we are sonifying something already, right? Like we feel we love, we broken heart, we want to compose something for some person, we sonify, I mean, some imagination to the sound. But in this sense, sonification, it means I apply the technique or method that I want to sonify any kind of non-speech data into the sound. This is another definition which my ex-professor is very clear definition for sonification for aesthetics purpose. Sonification is any technique that translates data into non-speech sound with a systematic and describable and reproducible method to review or facilitate communication, interpretation, or discovery of meaning that is talent in the data, having a particular artistic or scientific purpose. It means that sonification is like the process of how we interpret our data, our information into the sound. And this is the let's say category of the sonification technique. Nowadays, they still have update of the technique, but originally, sonification, the first sonification is called audification technique. It means like direct data translation. On this work, I employ just audification and parameter mapping sonification. Actually, parameter mapping is very well known. I mean, for us, for the composer, we've been doing it for a long time. But on my creative work, I lay on audification because it's like primitive effect, just direct translate. No need to mapping, no need to mapping to the musical attribute or anything. And it's the link. If someone who interesting for this sonification, you can follow that. This is the briefly diagram of how can I generate the sound. We have the data, we have the desired data, anything. In this case, I have the video of the Greek video. Let's say I sonify the video file. That basically is black and white color. Actually, it can be anything, any color. We have the desired data, and then we direct translate it. And the second method is I employ parameter mapping. I mean, just of course we must have some thing that we want to compose, we want to sonify it. Then let's say we translate, we mapping the data into musical attribute, like we can mapping into the melody to the sound, the melodic or any panning. To me, the parameter mapping is quite simple because many people do that. So this is the early sonification tool for audification. I think we don't have much, or maybe we better to listen a little bit to understand my work. Okay. So this is the Geiger counter, which the tool that detect the gradient. I mean, when you do some exporting on the mic, and then you have to investigate, I mean, how intensity of, I mean, how danger in that cave, and you need this to sonify to find out what is inside that which mineral you are searching, and this tool can tell us the outcome. And another example that's very familiar is, I think maybe almost of 7-Eleven in Thailand. I'm not sure in Korea. When we pass to the door, you will heard the sound like ding ding. This is the one kind of sonification as well. That tell the owner, the cashier, that okay, have someone get through the 7-Eleven, or about our car when we do backward, right? We should hear some thing like sensor sound. That data came from some maybe ultrasonic sound, and is translated into the signal to let us know what is behind the car. So basically, sonification actually is not designed for artistic use, but for scientific use. So this is another sonification example. It's come from seismic data of the earthquake in Tokyo. In scientific, where they have the data, and they have a bunch of data, but they can put the data into the shape of the wave, and then they can render it, they can sonify it directly. Actually, we can, if we know some tool like MSP or even Audacity, you can sonify your Microsoft Word file or anything. Right? You're just rendering some data into the sound. So, and the next is this my example of my work, which employ the audification method for artistic purpose. Okay, we don't have much time. We're just listening how it look like sonification. What I sonify is the whole video data. That's why it sounds noisy, because it's contain, I mean, streaming data that's always updated in milliseconds. You know, that's why you always heard the noise sound, I mean, at the background. And you always heard my kid sound, so maybe now she's noisy now. It's the work on 2017, and recently this work I'm just been working with my fish. Okay, I sonify my betta fish, pakat sound, and I compose it and do some. Okay, maybe listen. Ooh. Yeah, the aesthetic of color, I mix everything together. So that is the method of how I generate. Actually, it's the main point of my interesting now. I want to sonify everything into the sound. I mean, I try to find the relation to before I generate to the artwork. So the number 4 is about the process of the artwork. Firstly, I have to say that one of inspiration of this work comes from the piece of Marco Cicciolini. He is the Croatian historian, Austrian composer. He been in Thailand maybe a few months ago as well. It's the work of him which he composed for acoustic instrument and video. Maybe we just. So it's kind of inspiration, but to me, for this project, I just apply only, I just compose for solo work, because unfortunately, I mean, when we finish the school, I mean, it's in the real situation for the Thai artist or the Thai composer, it's quite hard to find anybody who interested to perform our work. And because of this reason, it made me become like a solo artist or solo development of some artwork. I can finish work by myself. Right? Yeah. I'm also compose for the musician as well. If I get some commission, if some of them know me, yes, I'm still compose for acoustic as well. So what is the process of work is derived as three process. The first is visual design, and the next is sound generative, which employ the sonification, and the last is we have to set the rule to make the composition. So it is the visual design. From 2 days ago, I attend the workshop of Dr. Enrico and Dr. Yui. It's very interesting. You know, it's. I wonder how can I mean, make use of that kind of software and then translate into the thing that what I'm doing now, because you do this kind of thing in Jitter, it's so complicated, so it's too difficult. This time if I look back to my program, I cannot explain anything well. So it's mean too big. I mean the data of the work. So it is the design of the work. I have to design the player controller. We are controlling the car, and we have the set of obstacle, and we mapping the key control to the ASCII keyboard, right, on our keyboard. And actually the rule of the game is not only avoid. You can do anything. You can hit, you can make a collision, you can avoid. It doesn't care anything. This is my aesthetic. So this is the continue what it look like. This is what I made it on Jitter, Max MSP. And when it collide with some obstacle object, it cause the glitch effect of like the image on the right. And basically how the sound come out, right? I mean the whole video output which we see on the screen, the all data translate directly and mapping method into the sound. We will hear the sound in the second. So this is what I mean in what I mean the data. I mean each let's say each image or each pixel, each video is contained with the number of data. My job is I just translate the data out and I sonify it into the sound. It can be anything, right? It depends on you are the artist, the composer. You set the rule. You make it become, I mean, your own method. But basically, I extract the data from the dimension, the pixel, and I generate it, draw it to the web table, and run it directly to the file. And it is just one custom patch of my work. I don't mention of this. Actually, it's no point. But the point is, I want to explain that it is the inside that we how I translate the visual data, in this case, image or video data, into the sound. Right. Actually, in the detail, it can modify so many things. I can change the speed of the reading, the rendering speed of the data. Right. So almost the last will be.
Yes, I think we'll have to conclude within the next few minutes if you can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And this is just the example of the work. Maybe just a few seconds. Okay. So if you like it, you can find it in the YouTube.
You can share links in the chat, so that everyone can, or even any communication platform you have, so people can ask you questions.
Yep.
It's really interesting work, Ice. I really like how you are carrying on following your own aesthetic and your own path. I really want to see what you come up with. I'm especially intrigued by the little dinosaur. What his role is.
Yeah, actually the idea, you can hit anything, you can try anything, and you correct the score, and at the end it will, I mean, congratulate to you. I mean, how many objects you were hit. It's kind of static. Actually, it had the hidden meaning. Like I wrote in the paper, like actually it's very politic piece. Right, I talk about like someone who let's say the rich man who had the money, they can do anything at this game. Right? You control the car, you can do anything, and at the end you success the performance. For example, you may hit like 1,000 objects, and no one cannot do anything. That's why I call it the free road. You can control anything. You can hit or you can avoid. It depends on your intelligence.
It's really interesting actually, because we used a piece for a recording that was a sonification of Jupiter's inner core rotating from NASA, and on a radio interview, the guy who was playing bass for me at the time, they said, "What's the weirdest thing you've had to do for him?" And he said, "Well, last week he asked me to play the sound of the planet Jupiter." So yeah, I love what you're doing. It's really interesting stuff. Actually, taking those natural sounds, it kind of fits in with what I'm about to talk about, actually.
Which I think maybe we should I think we should move on to Jonathan now, because maybe some people book time, especially to watch specific things. But thank you very much. Stay with us. Yeah, and I'm sure we can give you more time next time. Sorry, you got a little bit lost in the virtual space. But,
yeah, I'm sorry for the technical error as well.
Oh no. It was all part of the experience.
Yeah, maybe my fault. Okay, anyway, yes, thank you.